basically there's several modal verbs. So we're going to go through some of their uses today, and we're going to have a little bit of a practice. Some of the modal verbs, bear in mind, can be used for different things. Okay, so I'll try and sort of highlight those as we go through. So let's move to the first slide. So modal verbs are types of verbs. Okay, they're kind of auxiliary verbs. Okay, they never stand alone. You always need another verb with it. Okay, and they indicate things like likelihood, so probability, possibility, permission, ability, and obligation. Okay, and here are some of the common modal verbs. So the ones that you mentioned: can, could, may, might, must. Shall is probably one that perhaps is less familiar. It's not used very often nowadays, and it tends to be quite formal. Should, ought to I often think is quite British, because I don't hear many Americans use it. And it's very much kind of a synonym of should, really. Will, and of course would, which I didn't see would mentioned in the chat, so that was perhaps one that was missing. Okay, so let's move on to what we know about the modal verbs. So one key thing to remember with modal verbs is we have what a lot of grammar books and what I like to call pure modal verbs. Okay, and that's what we're talking about today. So we're talking about these pure modal verbs. Okay, the classic, the originals. We're not talking about modal phrases. So we're not talking about be able to or have to, because they behave slightly differently. Okay, so 3 rules that apply to the pure modal verbs are that they don't use a third person, okay, in the singular. So if I were to write something, for example, she must go to the doctor. Okay, I do not need a third person, so I don't say she musts.